Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 13th episode of the iGaming show presented by Paramount Commerce. I'm your host, Varad Mehta, and in this podcast, we analyze gaming industry trends with experts from various gaming organizations. In today's episode, we'll be exploring how iGaming and sports betting operators in the province are working to adapt to the evolving preferences and behaviors of online gaming players with Steven Salz, the CEO and co-founder at Rivalry. So without further ado, let's get the show rolling. So Stephen, how we begin this podcast is by asking you a few fun questions.
Sure.
So the first question I had is, do you think that by having a good or practical understanding of mathematics, someone can be a better problem solver?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just a great way to understand how to, I guess, like logically parse information that has absolute truth. Because math is, I think, the only thing that has absolute truth. So you know when, I suppose, like that you've done a good job problem solving at a hyper simplistic level because you're able to get to the correct answer. And even if we're not able to get the correct answer, I think just like the framework of how to tackle a math problem is something that can add like a lot of like calm, like emotional calm and rigor into how you just like deal with even your day-to-day life. So yeah.
My second fun question for you is, as someone who appreciates martial arts, could you name your three favorite MMA fighters and your all-time favorite martial arts movie?
I guess I'll start with the movie Bloodsport because I think everyone of
Oh,
like my
yes.
generation with like Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, I kind of grew up on that movie, I guess a little bit. Watched it so many times. I didn't really understand it at the time because I was kind of young, I guess. But yeah, I love that movie. I still love that movie. Um, yeah, I like Nick and Nate Diaz, like the Diaz brothers, just
Okay.
because they're just total. Yeah, it's like gangster fighting. I don't even know how to explain it. Like just like it's like they seem like they're the only people that go in the ring to like really fight, and I just kind
Yeah.
of love like the the rawness of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, then maybe I love like early generation, like first generation Chuck Liddell, kind of early UFC.
Yeah.
Just yeah, again, a style that now he would get absolutely annihilated, but back then it was like, UFC one and even pre-UFC one before they were numbered, it was like it was like the BJJ guy would go against like the boxer, and they only had like one skill set. Whereas now, obviously, they all kind of mix and match everything, and it's maybe a bit more of an even dynamic. But I kind of love that early where the brawler, the guy with like heavy hands like Chuck Liddell could just kind of yeah dominate. But yeah, it was just a very different kind of era. It was a lot of fun. And then maybe probably like early BJ Penn as well, also before
Okay.
BJ Penn kind of fell off the wagon. But I kind of love, yeah, early BJ Penn. I'm probably mentioning these guys just because, yeah, like I was really into UFC, um, like 2000, I don't know, 2006, 2007, 2008 era. So like that early UFC, and then before that Pride, and I love Pride as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
So all
yeah.
like
Pride
most
was.
of the Pride stuff is amazing. Yeah, yeah,
Those are wonderful choices. I like those. And
yeah,
Bloodsport, what a throwback. I haven't
yeah.
heard that in a while. And my last question is, I could be absolutely wrong on this one. But if you could give a piece of advice to the young Steven who made it on the Dean's honor list back in 2008, 2009, what would you tell him? And is my information correct?
Yeah, where'd you even get that?
I'm gonna pull a Nardwar and say, "You're Steven. We have to know."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was actually thinking that. Wow, that's funny. Um, yeah, I think that the big one is like compartmentalization. I think as I've gone on the rivalry journey, I don't know. Everyone always talks about discipline, which I think is really important, especially because you got all these kind of like Goggins bros out there and all this kind of stuff, and Jocko Willink bros. But yeah, I think that stuff, yeah, discipline matters, and I think there's maybe like a excessive emphasis on it. Like when I really have personally like studied history and studied people that I really revere, going back 100 years, 200 years, whatever it may be. I think the thing that I've picked up on like thematically and what have most benefited from, and I'd say I've only really learned in the last 1 to 2 years myself, even like just admittedly, is compartmentalization in a way I think is like probably the best skill for both being in general, like being successful in in life, however you define it. Like being able to kind of have something happen like early in your day that may like totally throw you off and be jarring. You get like a message from somebody that pisses you off or whatever, and being able to like instantly kind of turn the page and then turn your attention to the other task at hand as if that thing didn't even happen. It's actually very hard to do because someone will say something that like pisses you off and it fucking bothers you and you're all riled up and shit. But to be able to kind of like snap and that thing is gone as if it never existed and your full energy and intention into the next task, that is like I think the way you can um, really get the most done.
Basically, don't let anyone define your day, right? Know how to switch it off.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like because even for like my job, like it's gonna CEOs like filter for the most shit problems, right? So there's stuff that I'll wake up to stuff in my Slack from things that I hope would overnight in a different time zone that me of even 5 years ago when still kind of just getting the company started, it would really kind of like throw me off a little bit and emotionally maybe like annoy me. Whereas now I see that stuff and I can kind of like blink and just move on to the next thing. But it takes a very long time to be able to get to that point. But I think if you can compartmentalize really well, it benefits you, yeah, in kind of anything you're trying to do. Even if you have like other hobbies or passions, you have to be able to kind of turn off whatever happened in your day and then move on to that other thing and not be kind of carrying any weight of that into that next task. So yeah, I think that's something I would have told my earlier self to practice that a little bit more probably.
That's a good one, actually. I don't think people really take that into account because something can affect your day, and then you somehow let that slip into everything you do during the day. Maybe you don't have the same energy as you did, like, at whatever, 9 a.m. in the morning.
Mhm.
So I like that one. Now going away from the fun questions as much as I know you love them, but I'm just joking. But let's talk about what we're here to talk about, and it's about understanding, consumer behavior trends and how operators such as Rivalry apply them to,
Mhm.
acquire customers. Um, but just maybe understanding from your perspective, I'd love to know that what sort of behaviors or patterns have you seen from consumers within the first year of Ontario's regulated iGaming market? And, are there stuff related to age or, demographics? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think the start of the market was somewhat close to what we predicted. I remember we were talking in the press a little bit before the market launched that we felt it would be almost like launching a US state in terms of like the dynamics, as in where we operate rest of the world as well, Southeast Asia, South America, etc. These are like much more mature betting markets where even though some of them, yes, are like gray markets and others are regulated markets, or even Australia, we have a license, but there's like a very deep betting culture that kind of exists in them. Not to say Ontario wasn't a large gray market before regulation happened, but in terms of like how the operators then launched in this market, like DraftKings, FanDuel, Bet365, who switched to a regulated license, etc., it turned into a lot of what everyone saw in the US on a state by state basis, which was people got absolutely bombarded and overwhelmed with offers and bonuses. And for the initial competitive environment was going to be very driven by that dynamic. We were kind of cheeky in the press before saying, Rivalry's going to have the worst and least competitive offer in the market. So if you want to get some juicy bonus, don't come to us, which was true. Because like we weren't going to play that game because it's you can't ever like get off of it. It becomes like an impossible kind of hamster wheel. And it's just like against like the thesis of the entire company. But even like I remember I was in the covers Discord, the Ontario Discord before um the market launch. It was like the biggest Discord for Ontario bettors when it was switching to a regulated market. And I remember like one of the mods or one of the main people in that Discord was saying like the day before the market launch goes to there was thousands of Ontario bettors in there basically saying, hey, everyone, this is where the money's going to be made, where companies are going to be overpaying for customer acquisition. That's literally what they said. Like the customers were saying it to each other, as in like the bonus and offers were going to be kind of, you know, um, bathing in free money from operators, which is exactly what happened. So I think the initial like observed dynamic was it was actually hard to tell what the dynamic was because it was obviated by free money everywhere, and people were kind of just um, running around having multiple apps, multiple accounts, just getting as many of the bonuses and offers as they possibly could. I think now actually it's like settled into like a bit more of a classic dynamic, a little bit more, where different competitive angles are coming out where you've got the ones that are very like casino focused, you've got the ones that are very focus more on still like bonus and offer driven or whatever it may be. And slots has become a huge category in Ontario, which maybe surprised us a little bit just how popular slots has become. But yeah, I'd say like a bit of a non-answer because outside of like that initial bonus dynamic, there wasn't anything that was too surprising for us. And then we continue to focus, like Rivalry is very focused on like esports and I'd say like under 30 demo in terms of like the brand and how we approach things. So for us, I'd say maybe like we had a feeling that the market here was a bit immature relative to our more international markets in terms of an under 30 demo that watches content creators on Twitch and is a fan of esports and then betting on esports, being able to like make all those connections. Whereas like the cultural proclivity for sports betting in other markets among under 30s is a bit stronger, more historical, and they can easily kind of make that connection between watching a competitive thing and then being interested in betting on the competitive thing. Because in Ontario, for us specifically, we have found that like the market here is, I guess I'd say, like as nascent as we anticipated around esports betting, as in like a 24 to 30-year-old that has been a fan of Counter-Strike for 10, 15 years, been playing it, watching it competitively as well, is not as doesn't have the same propensity to make the connection to betting, and even isn't even aware that it exists, that you can even bet on Counter-Strike. So once we started kind of surfacing that entertainment category within the thing that they already do, being Counter-Strike, we have seen increasing adoption. We've seen a lot of pretty continuous growth every month in esports betting for us. But yeah, I'd say like the relative nascent cultural awareness of betting among the cohort we target, being esports fans, is certainly has some ways to go relative to other international markets. So yeah, some of the different things we've observed, I guess.
That's a good one. I think then how do you understand what the under 30 audience needs? Like, how do you as an operator understand what they want? I think esports is a really good example that you brought on because that is definitely unique. But how do you understand that? And then how do you, as Rivalry, find different things and cater it to them? So what does that look like in a new province? And as you
Yeah,
said, that esports is growing, right? It's
mhm,
relatively new in
definitely.
that sense. So could you maybe explain that? It's a good one.
Yeah, like the way that we talk about it for all of our markets is we've had this whole thing we call like crawl, walk, run. It's in like even our investor material. We've been talking about it a lot, but it's been like our internal model for years, which is whenever we go into a new market, even if it's a relatively mature one, it's like actually launching any business. You have a lot of assumptions when you start, and then when you actually go in and rubber hits the road, things end up being a little bit different than you expect. Again, even in these much more mature markets. So the way that we always go into it is it's like a bit of like a test and learn approach. Is crawl just means like we spend as little money as humanly possible to bring in some cohort of customers that we're targeting, and then to really like dial it in and figure out what it is that they want, where they exist, where they spend their time, how can we bring cost of customer acquisition down, which doesn't mean again like offers or bonuses and tuning those. It means like, are we finding the right pockets where they spend their time and where someone that has a propensity to potentially be on esports is more likely to kind of live. And then we just speak to them a lot. Like we do watch parties. So there's a bar in downtown Toronto called Off World. It's a very like gamer kind of centric bar, and we rent it out often. We have actually an event coming soon. I think August 6th. It's like the end of IEM Cologne, the big Counter Strike event coming up. But yeah, people should go. It's free on Eventbrite. You can find it. But we had hundreds of people show up to the last one that we had a few months ago. All local 18 plus Toronto Counter-Strike fans. There's many of them. And we just talked to them when they were there as well to understand what they were doing, what their appetites were, behaviors, how they spend their time, what they're interested in, all that kind of stuff. So it's low cost efforts to tune our own like antenna in terms of like where to point it to get like the signal, if that makes sense. And then we'll like slowly increase the spend when that cost of customer acquisition is coming down because we understand the customer, and when the ARPU, the average revenue per customer, is going up to kind of match it. And then once those are kind of at equilibrium, as in our revenue generated by customers approximately equal to our cost of customer acquisition, we're then in like the walk phase, which means we'll start to spend a bit more money because we're starting to, the antenna is turning in the right direction and the signal is becoming stronger. And we're learning more about the customer, and then we'll like slowly increase spend. It's kind of like the actual inverse approach of our competitors, to be honest, where they will maximize spend at the beginning and then try to solve for customer LTV and value later. They'll just like bombard the market with promotion, advertising, and bonus, which everyone in Ontario experienced. We were like all completely like overwhelmed in a somewhat annoying way with gambling ads for most of last year. So yeah, that's been our approach, and like that's how we've done it in all of our markets. Because again, even the markets that are like much more lucrative because they're more historical and there's more predisposition to it, you just look at a bunch of shit wrong. Like you make a bunch of assumptions and some are right and some are wrong. So we test and learn the exact same way. And it's been a way also to like preserve the capital of the company, because this is also a very expensive industry. You can burn a lot of money really quick on marketing. We try not to do that. So and we want to get to profitability. So it's also been just a healthy business model to sometimes move a bit slower to make sure we really understand the audience and that our product is like effectively tuned to that audience. So we know how to get to them in the right way, in a way that they actually care and resonates with them. And then only then we like start to stagger and increase spend. So that's what we've been doing to kind of understand what's going on here, I'd say.
That's an interesting. Then when you look at maybe then esports or sports betting or iGaming, maybe we can use esports as maybe the main reason. But are there like specific technologies that you use to maybe acquire customers or make their player experience more better, more immersive? Has the Rivalry team been doing that? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah. Yeah, like we built our whole product from scratch. So one of the things that we're somewhat proud of, just because a lot of the products in the industry are some combination of white labels. Like there's as many publicly traded B2B companies in gambling as there are B2C, because the B2B business is so big here. We use nothing other than odds feeds, like essentially everybody else, and payment providers. Otherwise, we built and own 100% of everything else we do. So yeah, there's a lot of this is like part of our broader thesis that we talk about for building successful consumer products for under 30s generally, betting or not, where the thesis we had years ago when we started the company, because myself and my co-founders don't come from the betting industry. Most of the company is not from the betting industry. They're all, creative types and engineers and consumer product people. And then we all kind of happened to then, and we all have like a shared passion for gaming for sure. Everyone's kind of gamer or even past esports pros. That's like the shared kind of thing between everyone. But yeah, we all just wanted to build like a great consumer brand and consumer product for our generation that happens to be in betting, which I think that angle has then allowed us to kind of build Rivalry in a bit of a different way, where we've definitely found success in a lot of the things that we do, because we think kind of like the benchmark for success now for this category for under 30s, which is 40% of global population now. But again, anyone building any consumer product is the product itself now, like a web-based product or mobile app, whatever, has to be like intrinsically entertaining in and of itself. So if you go back to like 5, 10, even 15 years ago, consumer products online, the one that like transactionally worked best was the one that would succeed. If you can move money really quick, like PayPal was great. Now like that's cash remittance in that way is not the same problem to be solved. And now it is more like a UX thing. If you look at the reason why Cash App has been so successful in the US and taken a lot of market share from Venmo exists pre-existed Cash App significantly. They actually both do the exact same thing, because there's like a commoditization of just the remittance of money. It's like e-transfer for us. This is not like this is not a technical problem to solve anymore like it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, like the movement of money. It's Cash App as one because they've created like a winning brand and an incredible user experience wrapped around a thing that is somewhat commoditized. Same with like Robinhood in the US or Wealthsimple here. Wealthsimple is like dominant for under 30s here because versus like an iTrade. Because if you're going to you can buy Tesla stock on either app, but from a onboarding, UX, brand, support, everything top to bottom experience, if you're 25 in Toronto and save a bit of money in your TFSA and you're going to invest it, your propensity to like successfully find onboard and have like a successful user experience in a Wealthsimple from a purely like brand identity and again like a simplistic user experience perspective that felt like it was built for you will be much higher than trying to go to iTrade and then buy a stock there. It's just not as intuitive. So betting is similar. We found where there's a you can place the same bet on many sports books, which is why many of them compete with bonuses and offers, because there's so much commoditization where like or even slots like you or many casino games. Everyone uses the same provider. So when you go load the game on one app versus another, the loading screen then that comes after is the exact same provider. Like if you go play Cleopatra on any sports app in the entire province, you will see the net end loading screen for all of them because they own that product and you're playing literally the exact same product from the same provider. So then that's why casino is the most bonus category typically, because the only way to possibly differentiate on that is who's got the best offer. We didn't want to be like in that game at all and felt that you could actually succeed in this category by not doing that. So for us, like we felt you had to make the product, the new benchmark for success for consumer products for under 30s for any category is like the brand definitely needs to be tied to the user experience. Like they both need to feel like one consistent composed thread, which is actually very hard to do for any consumer product. And then also like the product itself has to be entertaining. There has to be a reason to be like, entertained by the experience beyond just the transactional thing that you're there to do, which is place a bet, which you can kind of do anywhere. So for Rivalry, we have like lots of these different like quirks and Easter eggs throughout the product, and we're constantly adding them. So, two that come to mind is our cash out feature, which we call chicken out. If you know cash out, then it kind of makes sense why it's called chicken out.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's very like fun and entertaining where like, when you slide there's a slider of how much of your bet you want to cash out of, and it starts as an unhatched egg, and then as you slide more of it, it turns into like a little chick, and then a chicken, and then like a roast chicken, and then we've like paired all of our marketing with it. So we send like jacked guys in chicken suits to esports events that they run around and they like show up on the stream. And then we've built this whole like chicken character where we like have a chicken as a piece of our IP that we like it's like a mafia boss that like shows up in our marketing and it's like beloved in certain regions. Or we have like our casino product, we have this thing called casino.exe rather than going to play again that same third party game, which we do have some of these third party games ourselves, obviously. Rather than just like going to the tab and clicking it, there's like nothing there, nothing intuitive or intrinsically entertaining there. When you go to casino.exe on Rivalry, you can go right now in Ontario, you boot up like a fake emulated Windows 95 computer that looks like it's kind of Alice in Wonderland, very colorful, very Rivalry brand. We have our own version of a Microsoft Clippy we built. It's this little character. It's an axolotl, which is like a pink sea creature, and ours has like it's like naked, has two nipples, and we call it Mr. Nipples. And Mr. Nipples like shit talks you. So when you're like, it's like Clippy's talking to you. It's like Mr. Nipples, but he like gives you shit when you're using like the casino product and like fucks around with you. And there's like fake wallpapers. We made like a fake old school MP3 player, and you can play this crappy music that we've jokingly kind of pulled together. So you like build. And then the Mr. Nipples character, naturally, as you can imagine, appears in lots of our marketing, and it's this whole like little character IP we've developed. So everything like connects from like a brand and product and marketing perspective, and then the product itself has a lot of like quirk and entertainment built into it that like has a reason for you to be there and use it rather than like, oh, here's some free money. Do you want free money? Yeah. So
That's like that was obviously my next question. That apart from like having different technologies or building something from scratch, with your team, was there a marketing or content angle you use to acquire customers? There's just
yeah,
have
yeah,
some eyeballs on Rivalry, because I swear I don't know where it was, but maybe it's on Twitter or something. I saw a gentleman who had like a six pack, and then they had a
yeah. It's our chicken guy.
chicken mask,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, I need to ask Steven. Like, maybe I'll ask, what is the idea? Because you
It's not
maybe.
Twitter anymore. It's X.
Oh yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, correct me. So
Elon's
yes,
gonna find you now.
yeah, it's gonna bite me now. But yeah, maybe you explained that you rolled out these different campaigns, but maybe what was the idea behind them? Like,
Yeah, I think like a
why
good
those
example.
things?
Yeah, so I think a good example is I'm just pulling up now. One of our partners in Latin America was on a podcast talking about this show that we've put together with them where it's called Next Move, and it's like large League of Legends personalities sitting down in a podcast style format, but very like intimate, very produced, and again includes a lot of this like character IP we've created. So in League of Legends in South America, we have Rivalry. We created this whole thing 2 years ago. That's like really taken off where instead of Rivalry being a bunch of human beings behind a company, Rivalry is a cult of goats, like the animal. So the initial video went completely like kind of viral because we went with like a very large League of Legends partner there, and he's in like a gothic style house, and then goes in to sign a deal, and it's like literally goats, like the animal, like but like again death kind of zombie cultic goats, and he signs a blood pact with the company, and that's what the contract is. And then everything we've done since then, if anything we do in League of Legends, you sign a blood pact with Rivalry rather than a contract with the company, because I think it goes back to like the demo we target and the way that we just perceive marketing and advertising now for this generation. It's not like Mad Men style marketing anymore. It's not, slap a logo, Marlboro Man or what. Like it's like a different kind of affinity people have. Where like I think an under 30 demo, my generation, I'm 32, um, just there's a lot of I guess like snark and people don't like a lot of ad block. Like people don't fall for classic traditional advertising the way that maybe our parents' generation did because it was more of like a novel thing, the advertising industry then, whereas like people don't have affinity to brands in such like a literal way anymore. And they're kind of, it's weird when you see two like older brands on Twitter that clearly got like the Zoomer to run the Twitter account, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're like the brands are like talking to each other, and it feels like it's like very like dystopian and like weird. It's like, what are they doing? Um, so we don't think that like slapping our logo on like, a stream is like enough, or like just partnering with someone and like, I'm with Rivalry now, because like there's not like the same thinking that people have around a brand from a brand name perspective anymore in the way that they used to. But people have affinity for like characters and narratives and storyline and IP. So like these animals we've used, and like the goat is kind of representative of like the irreverent nature of Rivalry, and it like appears as like a piece of IP that people have really connected to us and like that we're behind. So then when we launched this like podcast with this guy, it takes place in the same aesthetic environment of like a gothic style house, and then like there's like a goat bartender that comes in and serves them wine and stuff, and it's like integrated into kind of the content experience. And it's been successful from a customer acquisition perspective from us, because we could see what happens. But he was on a podcast basically, and um he was talking about how we've been like supportive from the beginning of the project, and one of the things that's nice is how his experience with Rivalry, we've been with him for a while, and what we've done with this project is he's like, the marketing isn't like, bet, bonus, and like all the podcasters are kind of like engaging in it, and it's because like we're one of the few brands that will actually just go in to support a piece of like great content and a piece of great entertainment. And from a commercial perspective, it still has to work for us. We can't just do that for fun. So yeah, we've built like we have a pretty sophisticated creative engine that has solved for injecting brand IP in an organic way that fits with the community, and we can support just like raw entertainment that still can translate back to creating like a certain brand image in someone's mind. So when they think about betting on League of Legends, Rivalry comes to mind, and the podcaster basically says that, where he's like, I'm getting bombarded with such like literal gambling ads constantly, but he's like, anytime I ever think about League of Legends, all I think about is Rivalry, because we have such a big presence in that community there because of the way we've like ingrained and kind of injected the IP in an organic way into the community without kind of shoving it down people's throats. So I think like that's always been the approach. So all the characters and all the ways that we create the chicken man that ties to the chicken out feature, which is our cash out feature, there's still connectivity to the product because it has to be marketing. But it's not um yeah, it's not so literal that it's also like becomes ignored, because it just feels like advertising, I guess you could say. So like we always compare to like the Red Bull models like that as well, where I don't know. I mean, other than that one Red Bull gives you wings ad that everyone has seen, and that's like still the one they use today, most people probably haven't seen Red Bull advertising. Like, when was the last time you saw like a new ad for Red Bull? You don't, but you see Red Bull fucking everywhere. Like the F1 team, they fly, they do plane races, they build crazy shit for some snowboarder's hometown, does some crazy half pipe thing. The guy flies down from space. Like, you know, they do. Red Bull is an adrenaline product, being an energy drink, and all they've done is they've just paired it with like adrenaline based entertainment and content. And then anytime you go to buy an energy drink, there's such a fixed brand image of Red Bull in your mind, but they never like sold it to you. They never like said like, go buy Red Bull, it's the greatest energy drink, like low calorie, blah blah blah. They never do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. But so it's conceptually the same thing we're always trying to do, I'd say.
My last question would be, is there anything that you are working on specifically, maybe you or maybe the rivalry team in general, that you're excited about that we should look out for in the next months, next year?
Yeah. In the next month, people will see a betting product from us that is basically a first for esports, but I think is quite popular in traditional sports. We've been able to get it working for esports from a sports betting perspective, so people can start to probably figure out what it is. But I won't say it yet. But yeah, it will be a first within the esports category for the major titles. Um, and pretty excited about that. The first version of it will be functional, and the second version, which should come out probably 30 to 45 days later, we'll have a casino.exe overlay in terms of like a very, um, again, rivalry, irreverent, entertaining, visual identity, I'd say. And I'd say the initial marketing also will be kind of bizarre and our usual stuff. So that's coming in the next month. Um, that's a near term thing. And then another one that's probably coming in 45 to 60 days is, so won't say what it is, but we build original casino games at Rivalry. So we got one game called Rush Lane. We have a small like indie style game development team internally at the company. It's like an important part of R&D for us because the same thing we found like our demo is, we don't they're not all they're not as excited by like the same kind of rapid style casino games that have existed forever and like on casino floors forever. Some just want like a more casual piece of entertainment, the kind of stuff they do on Twitch. So if you ever watch Twitch, Twitch streamers will do like marble races and stuff where there's no money and no stake in it, but like you're passively a participant. You're like a marble. You show up in the game when they're playing it on stream, and there can be hundreds of you. But it's just like a shared entertainment experience. And Rush Lane is kind of like that. Is like a very shared entertainment experience right now where people play with their favorite streamers on Rivalry and put up like a very small stake, but it takes like 3 to 4 minutes to complete. So it's not like a slot machine, which is more rapid, where it's like every few seconds, right? This is like literally 3 to 4 minutes. You got to wait for something to happen, but it's like a very visually entertaining experience. We have another game we've been building for a little bit that is getting close to being released. So kind of a next original game from us that again is like stylistically, I'd say very Rivalry and very much for our audience, and the first of more games that we're going to start to kind of push out more rapidly that is like original kind of in-house game titles from us that yeah I think will be fun, where again like low stakes, kind of casual, but yeah entertaining and a very like strong visual identity that will again kind of it connects out with a lot of the other IP and stuff that I've talked about in this interview, so everything will kind of feel connected from a yeah narrative perspective.
I love this. Um, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope whoever listens to this podcast can understand the importance of, tech, the importance of marketing that we, spoke about so in detail. And Stephen provided some wonderful, like amazing examples, whether, it's Red Bull or even Rivalry in general and all of their amazing, tactics and plans that they're applying to the market. And yeah, thank you so much. It's always amazing to have an expert on the podcast, and I learned so well. I'm gonna go out and apply to my job as well. So thank you, Steven, and yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'd say if I was gonna like end with anything, because it maybe connects to even the math comment at the beginning all the
Oh
way to
yeah.
the end to kind of like bookend it, would be I remember I saw this like this was like years ago, like 10 years ago, but there's like a somewhat obscure Steve Jobs speech that is not one of the main ones people have seen. You can find it on YouTube. It's called like Steve Jobs. If you search like Academy of Achievement, he won this like I don't know what the fuck the Academy of Achievement is, but anyways, it's just audio. It's not that well known, but that was one that like really resonated with me in like my early 20s and kind of changed my approach to kind of learning and how I went about my own life a little bit. And he basically was saying he was giving advice where he was explaining that if you go about things the same way or have like a narrow focus on just the thing that you're doing, which I think when you're younger, you have like the hustle kind of grind mindset and you focus 100% on like just the company you're building or just the thing that you're doing. And then all the material you read is like things that are only tied in some way to the thing you're doing. I think that's like also like early to late 20s trap that people fall into, like in the hustle culture trap, which is like you feel if you're not reading a thing that you can in a very direct and linear way tied to your work, that it's not a good use of your time, which actually ends up making you uh, it's going to work against what I think most people in the hustle culture are trying to do, I'd say. But and the way he described it is essentially like if you do that, then your kind of bag of knowledge, then kind of talks about as like a bag of knowledge, you're only able to make very like linear connections and like the same ones that any of your peers are able to make because you've all read the same shit and done the exact same thing. For me at the time, I was like studying for the CFA because I was working in finance and I ended up dropping the CFA. But I was looking around and like everyone else is studying the CFA. So like if I do it and they're all doing it, then like we're just all going to be like going up at the same level. I'm not going to have any kind of leapfrog here. And then it gives the advice he gives the audience is like rather than do that kind of thing that I just described, he's like take a year off and he says like go to Paris and become a poet and fall in love with two people. Talks about shit like that because of Steve Jobs and says shit like that. But basically explains that you'll come back though with like a bag of experience that is somewhat discontinuous, it appears, but you'll be able to make novel connections because you'll have such like random things in your brain that you can then make innovative connections between things because you're not just studying linear things. So I found that like my own experience in Rivalry, yeah, looking at things or understanding things like math in my free time, or reading stuff again that has like absolutely fucking nothing to do with my job or my industry or anything like that. Even fiction, I find fiction's been like way more beneficial than nonfiction in my life in general, than like a business book. And I think very few people do this, and often I find it's a pretty common thread behind more dynamic and interesting and successful people is they've been able to make connections from very disparate things that seem totally unconnected, and then that's how you do something more novel. So yeah, not saying to study math, I'm just saying to don't get stuck in the, you know, business book uh, loop and being so literal with only understanding and spending time looking at things that pertain in an exact and direct way to your job. Because if that is the case, then you'll never, it will be impossible to do something novel, because you literally will not have knowledge that will allow you to make novel connections, because you only know one thing. So yeah, that'd be my bookended advice to this conversation.
I love to meet someone who loves learning and who advises others to learn and experience other things. So that is really cool. That's something interesting about it. You should do a podcast called Learn Things with Steven. I'm not even joking. I think people would enjoy it. I'm not even joking because it's so interesting. Whether it's math or whatever your interests are, your examples are non-industry related as well. So I appreciate that knowledge that you shared with us, and others and even myself can benefit from that. So again, awesome stuff. Thank you, Steven. Thank you so
Sweet.
much.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Whether it is new technologies or interesting marketing tactics, operators in the province are working hard to reach out to a new generation of online gaming players. I want to thank our guest today, Steven Salz, the CEO and co-founder at Rivalry, for joining us today and providing his expertise. If you have any questions for us or Steven, please do comment them down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the episode transcript and more content, please visit ParamountCommerce.com. Thank you so much for tuning into the iGaming Show presented by Paramount Commerce. I'm your host, Varad Mehta, and until next time, keep gaming.